School corporal punishment has historically been justified on several grounds, but perhaps the most commonly cited purpose is deterrence. The central idea is straightforward. If an unpleasant consequence follows misconduct, pupils will be discouraged from repeating that behavior in the future. Whether corporal punishment actually functions as an effective deterrent, however, is far from clear. Ethical concerns and practical limitations make it difficult to study the subject scientifically. As a result, much of the debate relies on broader observations about human behavior and our relationship with pain. One way to examine the issue is to consider activities that involve significant risk of injury. Cycling provides an interesting example. The potential consequences of cycling can be severe. At the extreme end of the spectrum are life-altering injuries such as paralysis or death. Less severe but still serious outcomes include broken bones, extensive abrasions, head injuries, and prolonged recovery from accidents. Even routine cycling can involve discomfort in the form of fatigue, muscle soreness, bruises, or minor injuries. Yet despite these risks, millions of people continue to cycle. The possibility of pain or injury does not eliminate the behavior. Most cyclists acknowledge the dangers, but judge the benefits, whether enjoyment, exercise, convenience, or personal satisfaction, to outweigh the risks. This observation raises an important question. If the prospect of severe pain does not reliably deter people from activities they value, why should we assume that the threat of corporal punishment will necessarily deter all forms of misconduct? Human behavior is influenced by many factors beyond the avoidance of pain alone. Historical accounts of school corporal punishment often support this view. While some pupils undoubtedly feared the cane, strap, slipper, or paddle, others came to regard punishment quite differently. For many children, receiving corporal punishment became an event invested with social meaning. Rather than being viewed solely as a deterrent, it could become a test of courage, endurance, or maturity. In some schools and cultures, being caned was regarded by certain boys as a kind of rite of passage. The experience was sometimes seen as evidence that one had faced a significant challenge and endured it successfully. This perception could even undermine the intended deterrent effect, as the punishment acquired symbolic value beyond the immediate pain it inflicted. Such attitudes also influenced perceptions of gender. Some boys argued that if girls could endure corporal punishment, then the experience could not have been particularly severe. Embedded within this view was the assumption that girls were physically or emotionally less capable than boys. Yet the same observation could be interpreted in precisely the opposite way. If girls endured the same punishment under the same circumstances, it suggested that they possessed equal resilience and fortitude. More broadly, societies often recognize various experiences as rites of passage marking transitions from one stage of life to another. For women, motherhood is frequently regarded as one such transition. Childbirth, in particular, is often described as one of the most demanding physical experiences a person can endure. Those who have witnessed childbirth firsthand frequently remark upon its intensity. The pain involved can be profound, prolonged, and physically exhausting. Comparisons between childbirth and corporal punishment are necessarily imperfect, as the two experiences occur in entirely different contexts and serve very different purposes. Nevertheless, such comparisons highlight the difficulty of making assumptions about human endurance based solely on gender. The distinction between pain that is chosen and pain that is imposed is also important. Consider again the example of cycling. A cyclist knowingly accepts the possibility of injury as a consequence of pursuing an activity they enjoy. In that sense, the risk is voluntarily undertaken. Corporal punishment occupies a more complex position. Some defenders historically argued that pupils effectively chose the punishment by knowingly breaking rules that carried clearly stated consequences. From this perspective, the resulting pain could be viewed as the foreseeable outcome of a voluntary decision. Critics, however, reject this reasoning. They argue that regardless of the pupil's behavior, the pain is still intentionally inflicted by another person who holds authority over them. The punishment is not self-administered but imposed by someone else, making it fundamentally different from the risks associated with voluntary activities. Underlying all such debates is a deeper problem. Pain itself is intensely subjective. Unlike physical measurements such as height, weight, or temperature, pain cannot be directly observed or quantified. We can measure physiological responses associated with pain, including brain activity, stress hormones, heart rate, and endorphin production. But these measurements do not reveal exactly what another person experiences. Two individuals may react very differently to the same stimulus. One may report intense suffering, while another experiences only moderate discomfort. Even when physiological indicators appear similar, the subjective experience can vary enormously. This uncertainty has led to discussions about whether boys and girls experience pain differently. Scientific research can identify differences in biological responses, but it cannot definitively tell us how pain feels to the individual experiencing it. For example, higher levels of endorphin production may indicate a stronger response to pain, yet endorphins also act as natural painkillers. A person who is more sensitive to pain may simultaneously possess more effective biological mechanisms for coping with it. Psychological factors further complicate the picture. Individuals who experience pain frequently may develop coping strategies that make them appear less affected, even when the underlying sensation remains intense. Cultural expectations, personal experience, emotional state, and social environment can all influence how pain is perceived, expressed, and remembered. For these reasons, any discussion of corporal punishment must recognize the limitations of our understanding. Pain is not a simple, uniform experience, and deterrence is not a straightforward process. Human beings do not always avoid painful outcomes, nor do they all respond to pain in the same way. The historical debate over school corporal punishment therefore raises broader questions about authority, behavior, resilience, and the complex relationship between pain and human decision-making.